Hello folks, today we're going to explore something really fundamental to playing the guitar: how we tune it. Most guitars you see and hear use something called standard tuning. This is the starting point for nearly every guitarist. The notes from the thickest string closest to your chin to the thinnest string closest to the floor are E, A, D, G, B, and then another E. That low E is a deep, resonant sound, and the high E is 2 octaves higher, much brighter and thinner. It's a sequence most guitarists learn on their very first day, and it becomes second nature pretty quickly, which is super helpful. Think of these notes as the guitar's alphabet. The thickest string, the 6th string, is tuned to E. The next one, the 5th string, is A. Then comes the 4th string, D. After that, the 3rd string is G. The 2nd string is B. And finally, the thinnest 1st string is another E, but much higher in pitch. This specific order of notes isn't random. It's been carefully developed over time to make playing music as straightforward as possible. Knowing these open string notes is the first step to understanding your fretboard, and it's a crucial foundation for everything else you'll learn on the instrument. This E, A, D, G, B, E sequence is what we call standard, because it's the most common and widely accepted way to tune a 6-string guitar. If you pick up a guitar in a shop or borrow one from a friend, chances are it will be in standard tuning. This uniformity is fantastic because it means a chord shape you learn will sound correct on most guitars. It also makes it easier for guitarists to play together, read music or tablature written for guitar, and generally share musical ideas. It's like having a common language for guitar players all around the world, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. The way these notes are spaced out also helps with the physical act of playing. The intervals, or pitch differences, between most adjacent strings are what we call a perfect fourth. This means if you play the open 6th string, E, the note on the 5th fret of that same string is an A, which is the same note as the next open string. This pattern continues for the A, D, and G strings. This consistent spacing makes many common chord shapes and scale patterns relatively comfortable for your fingers to reach, forming a very ergonomic system for your hands. We'll look at a slight exception to this later on, but for now, just know it's mostly very regular. So, why is standard tuning so incredibly popular? Well, one of the biggest reasons is how beautifully it lends itself to playing chords. Many of the most common chords, like G major, C major, D major, E minor, and A minor, are relatively easy to play in standard tuning. These open chords use a combination of fretted notes and open strings, giving them a full, resonant sound. This makes it accessible for beginners to start making music quickly, which is incredibly encouraging when you're just starting out. It's designed to make common musical building blocks feel natural under your fingers. Another fantastic benefit is how standard tuning facilitates playing melodies and scales. The tuning allows scale patterns to be moved across the fretboard with a degree of consistency. While there's a little shift needed around the B string, more on that soon, the overall layout means that once you learn a scale shape, you can often use variations of that shape in different positions. This makes improvising and playing lead lines quite intuitive once you get the hang of it. You can smoothly move from low notes to high notes, creating flowing musical phrases without too much awkward finger contortion. The versatility of standard tuning is also a major factor in its widespread use. It works wonderfully across a huge range of musical genres. From folk strumming to bluesy riffs, from classical pieces to rock anthems, standard tuning provides a solid foundation. While other tunings might be used for specific sounds or styles, standard tuning is the jack of all trades. It doesn't box you into one particular sound, giving you the freedom to explore many different musical avenues. This adaptability is why it's the default for so many players and so many different types of songs. Finally, standard tuning acts as a common ground for guitarists. When you learn in standard tuning, you can easily understand lessons, tutorials, and song transcriptions from countless sources. If you want to learn a song by your favorite artist, it's highly probable that the tablature or chord chart will be written for standard tuning. This shared understanding makes learning and collaborating much simpler. It's the bedrock upon which a vast amount of guitar music and educational material has been built, making it an essential starting point for anyone keen to learn the instrument. Now let's talk about a famous little quirk in standard tuning, the B string. Most of the strings in standard tuning are tuned a perfect fourth apart. This means from the low E to the A string is a fourth. From A to D is a fourth. From D to G is also a fourth. This regular interval makes many scale patterns and bar chord shapes quite predictable as you move across these strings. It creates a nice, even feel. However, this pattern changes when we get from the G string to the B string. The interval between the G string and the B string is different. It's a major third. This is a slightly smaller interval than a perfect fourth. Then, from the B string to the high E string, it goes back to being a perfect fourth. This change from G to B is the reason why some chord shapes need to be adjusted when they cross these strings. For example, the shape of a bar chord changes slightly on the top strings because of this major third interval. It's a little detail, but it has a noticeable impact on how we form certain voicings and navigate the fretboard. Why is it tuned this way with this little irregularity? It's a compromise that actually makes many common major and minor chords easier to play, especially open chords like C major and D major. If the B string were tuned to a C, a perfect fourth above G, some very common and useful chord shapes would become much more difficult to finger, or even impossible for many players. So this tuning of EADGBE is a clever balance, making most things work out pretty well for playing the chord voicings essential to Western popular music. Tuning the B string accurately can sometimes feel a bit trickier than the others, especially when tuning by ear. Because of that major third interval from the G, it can sound a little off if you're expecting the same harmonic relationship as the other strings. When tuning, a good tip is to fret the G string at the 4th fret. This note is a B and it should sound the same as your open second, B string. Using an electronic tuner is of course the easiest way to get it spot on, but understanding this interval helps your ear training too. It's just one of those little things that makes the guitar the unique instrument it is. Standard tuning for the guitar, EADGBE, didn't just appear out of nowhere. Its roots can be traced back through centuries of stringed instrument development. Instruments like the European lute and the Spanish vihuela, which were popular long before the modern guitar, often used tunings with similar interval patterns, primarily in fourths, with a major third somewhere in the middle. These older instruments experimented with different numbers of strings and tuning schemes, but the underlying logic was often about making common harmonies accessible for the player's hand. The evolution towards what we now call standard tuning was a gradual process, not the invention of a single person. As instrument makers refined the design of the guitar, particularly during the 18th and 19th centuries, the 6-string configuration and its associated tuning became more and more common. Luthiers and players found that this particular arrangement offered a fantastic balance between a good tonal range, from low E to high E, and the ability to play both complex chords and melodic lines with relative ease. By the time the modern classical guitar, as championed by luthiers like Antonio de Torres Jurado in the mid-19th century, became established, this EADGBE tuning was pretty much the norm. Torres's designs significantly influenced the guitars we play today, and with his instruments came the widespread adoption of this tuning. It proved to be incredibly versatile for the classical repertoire being written at the time, and its strengths carried over perfectly as the guitar moved into folk, blues, jazz, and eventually rock and pop music. It was a system that simply worked very well. So, while we can't point to a single inventor or a specific date, standard tuning for the guitar is the result of a long evolutionary journey. It's a system refined over hundreds of years by countless musicians and instrument makers, all searching for the most practical and musically expressive way to arrange the notes on their strings. Its endurance and continued popularity today are a testament to how well that search ultimately paid off, providing a robust and flexible foundation for guitarists of all styles and abilities. It's a legacy that we all benefit from every time we pick up our instrument. One of the best ways to appreciate standard tuning is to realize just how much incredible music has been made with it. A vast majority of the songs you hear on the radio, stream online, or learn to play are in standard tuning. Think about Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. While it has intricate fingerpicking and a famous solo, the core guitar parts are largely rooted in standard tuning, allowing for those beautiful arpeggiated chords and soaring melodies. It really showcases just how much depth and complexity you can achieve without altering the basic setup of the instrument. Another absolute classic that many guitarists learn early on is Wonderwall by Oasis. Now this song is famously played with a capo on the 2nd fret, but the guitar itself is in standard tuning before the capo is applied. The chord shapes used, like E minor 7, G, D suspended 4, and A7 suspended 4, are all standard tuning shapes, just transposed higher by the capo. This demonstrates how standard tuning provides a familiar framework, even when we use tools like a capo to change the key. It's the foundational tuning that makes these common, effective chord progressions possible. Let's not forget the Beatles. A song like Yesterday is a beautiful example of songwriting and guitar playing in standard tuning. Though Paul McCartney famously tuned his guitar down a whole step for the original recording to make it easier to sing, the relative tuning of the strings was still standard, and many play it in standard at concert pitch. Its gentle melody and poignant chords are perfectly executed within this tuning, showing its suitability for softer, more melodic pieces, as well as powerful rock anthems. The chord voicings are classic and flow beautifully. And for something a bit heavier, Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses features one of the most iconic guitar riffs of all time, played in standard tuning. Though like many rock bands, they often tune down a half step live to E-flat standard for a heavier sound and vocal ease, the relative intervals are the same as standard. Slash's melodic intro and powerful rhythm parts demonstrate the versatility of standard tuning for rock music. These examples, and thousands more, show that standard tuning is far from limiting. It's a gateway to endless musical possibilities. Now let's talk about a super useful tool for guitarists. The capo. What exactly is a capo? Well, it's a small device that clamps down across all the strings of your guitar at a particular fret. Think of it like a movable nut, or a temporary, artificial finger barring all the strings. When you place a capo on the second fret, it effectively shortens the vibrating length of all the strings. This means all the open strings will now sound higher in pitch 2 semitones, or one whole step higher than normal. Why would you want to use a capo? One of the main reasons is to change the key of a song easily. Imagine you know how to play a song using lovely open G, C, and D chords, but the key is a bit too low for your singer's voice. Instead of having to learn a whole new set of more difficult barre chords in a higher key, you can simply put a capo on the appropriate fret. For instance, a capo at the 3rd fret would let you use those same G, C, and D shapes, but the song would now sound in the key of B-flat, making it much more comfortable for the vocalist. Another reason guitarists use capos is for tonal variety. Playing chords with a capo higher up the neck can give the guitar a brighter, more mandolin-like sound. It can add a different texture to a song, especially if another guitarist is playing the same chords without a capo in a lower position. This layering of sounds can be really effective. Some specific chord voicings also just sound particularly nice or are easier to play when using a capo, allowing for unique ringing open strings in new keys. There are many famous songs that rely on a capo. Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles is a classic example, with a capo on the 7th fret, giving it that bright, joyful sound. Hotel California by the Eagles often features a 12-string guitar with a capo on the 7th fret for its iconic intro arpeggios, creating a shimmery, distinctive texture. Even a song like Wonderwall by Oasis, as we mentioned, uses a capo at the 2nd fret. The capo is a simple but powerful tool that opens up a lot of creative options without having to retune your entire guitar. While standard tuning is fantastic, sometimes guitarists want a different sound or feel. And that's where alternative tunings or alt tunings come in. One of the most popular is drop D tuning. To get this, you simply tune your thickest E string down a whole step to D, so your strings become D, A, D, G, B, E. The big advantage here is that it gives you a lower, heavier bottom end, and it makes playing power chords on the lowest 3 strings super easy. You can just bar one finger across them. This is brilliant for rock and metal music. Many famous songs use drop D. Everlong by Foo Fighters has that powerful driving sound thanks to drop D. Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine also uses it for its heavy, aggressive riffs. The challenge with drop D is that your old E-based chord shapes involving the 6th string won't work the same way, so you have to adjust. But for that chunky, low sound, it's a fantastic and relatively simple alteration to make. It's often the first alternative tuning guitarists learn because it's so accessible. Next up is open G tuning. For this, you tune your guitar so the open strings form a G major chord, D, G, D, G, B, D. This usually involves tuning the low E down to D, the A string down to G, and the high E string down to D. The massive benefit of open G is that strumming all the open strings gives you a full G major chord. This makes it amazing for slide guitar, as you can move a slide up and down the neck and easily create chords. Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones is a master of open G, using it on classics like Start Me Up and Brown Sugar, often removing his low 6th string entirely. The challenge with open G is that pretty much all your standard chord shapes become obsolete. You have to learn a whole new way of thinking about chords, often relying on simple 1 or 2 finger shapes or the slide. However, The rich, resonant sound and the ease of playing bluesy, open-sounding riffs make it very appealing for certain styles. Romeo and Juliet by Dire Straits, while often played with a capo, is another beautiful example of Open G's potential, showcasing its melodic possibilities beyond just strumming. Finally, let's touch on DADGAD tuning, pronounced DADGAD. As the name suggests, you tune your strings to DADGAD. This involves tuning the low E down to D, the B string down to A, and the high E string down to D. DADGAD is incredibly popular in Celtic and folk music. It creates a wonderful, mystical, drone-like quality because of the repeated D and A notes. This makes it great for fingerstyle playing, as you can have these sympathetic notes ringing out while you play melodies on top. Artists like Pierre Bensusan and the late Davy Graham were pioneers of DADGAD, showcasing its intricate possibilities. Even Led Zeppelin's Kashmir uses a DADGAD-like tuning on a Dane electro guitar, creating that epic, spacious sound. The challenge, much like Open G, is that it requires a completely new approach to chords and scales, but the unique modal soundscapes it can create are truly captivating, offering a completely different sonic palette compared to standard tuning. It encourages a more melodic and rhythmic approach to playing. The quest for a heavier sound in rock and metal music has led many guitarists to explore tunings that go much lower than standard E, or even drop D. These extreme tunings involve detuning most, if not all, of the strings significantly. This creates a powerful, deep, and often aggressive tone that has become a hallmark of many subgenres of metal. For these super low tunings, guitarists often need to use thicker gauge strings to maintain proper tension and clarity. Otherwise, the strings can become too floppy and sound muddy. Common examples include drop C tuning, which is C, G, C, F, A, D, where the entire guitar is tuned down 2 whole steps from standard, and then the lowest string is dropped another step to C. This is popular in metalcore and modern metal. Even lower is drop B tuning, which is B, F sharp, B, E, G sharp, C sharp, a favorite for bands seeking a truly guttural sound. Slipknot, for instance, is well known for using drop B and even drop A on their 7-string guitars, creating a seismic sonic assault that defines their music. Speaking of which, the advent of 7-string and 8-string guitars has pushed the boundaries of low tunings even further. 7-string guitars typically add a low B string below the standard E, so that's B, E, A, D, G, B, E, but many players tune them down from there. Korn was one of the pioneering bands to popularize the 7-string guitar, often tuning it down to A standard, which is A, D, G, C, F, A, D. 8-string guitars add yet another lower string, often an F sharp, allowing bands like Meshuggah to explore tunings as low as F standard, creating incredibly complex, rhythmically challenging music with an earth-shattering low end. These extreme tunings present unique challenges. Beyond needing specialized strings and often professional setup adjustments to the guitar, playing in such low registers requires a different approach to riff writing and melody. The note separation can be less clear if not handled carefully, and traditional chord voicings often don't work well. However, for musicians in genres like djent, deathcore, and progressive metal, these ultra-low tunings are essential tools for achieving the desired weight, atmosphere, and rhythmic complexity in their sound. They are a testament to the ongoing evolution of guitar techniques. You might have heard the term A440 in relation to tuning, especially if you use an electronic tuner. So what does it mean? A 440 is a tuning standard where the A note above middle C, often called A4, is set to vibrate at a frequency of 440 Hz. This specific pitch reference is widely used around the world as concert pitch. It allows musicians in orchestras, bands, and various ensembles to all tune their instruments to the same reference point, ensuring that when they play together, they sound harmonious and in tune with each other. The widespread adoption of A440 as a standard is relatively modern, becoming more common in the 20th century. Before that, tuning pitches could vary quite a bit by region and even by orchestra. Having a common standard like A440 makes life much easier for instrument manufacturers, musicians playing together from different backgrounds, and for ensuring recordings sound consistent. Most electronic tuners are calibrated to A440 by default, so when you tune your A string using 1, you're tuning it to vibrate at 440 times per second, or an octave below or above that. However, not all music is tuned to A440. Sometimes you'll encounter music that sounds slightly off if you try to play along in A440. One reason for this can be older recordings made before A440 was universally adopted, or recordings made on equipment that wasn't perfectly calibrated. These might be slightly sharper or flatter. For instance, some Baroque music enthusiasts prefer to tune to A415, which is about a semitone lower than A440, as it's believed to be closer to the pitch standards of that historical period. Another common reason for deviating from A440 is artistic choice. Many rock and blues guitarists like Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and bands like Guns N' Roses or Van Halen famously tuned all their strings down by one semitone. This is often called E-flat tuning, E-flat, a flat D-flat, G-flat, B-flat, E-flat. This can make the strings feel a little looser and easier to bend, give the guitar a slightly fatter or heavier tone, and can also make it easier for vocalists to hit certain notes. So, while A440 is the standard, there's still room for variation based on historical context, practical considerations, or creative preference.